I drove her home to her front door. Then she whispered, "Don't stop yet." The rhythmic clicking of the car's turn signal was the only sound in the cabin. I had forgotten to turn it off after pulling against the curb, and under normal circumstances I would have fixed it immediately. Details like that bothered me. Loose routines bothered me. Unclosed loops bothered me. But Elena Morgan sat in my passenger seat with her phone clamped under her thumb, pressing so hard the skin around the knuckle had gone white, and the tiny metronome of the signal suddenly felt useful. One click, one breath, 1 second not to panic. Outside, her street looked almost too calm for the size of the problem she had just carried into my car. Porch lights glowed behind trimmed hedges. A dog barked 2 houses down and stopped. Sprinklers ticked somewhere in the dark. Elena's front door stood at the end of a brick path, neat and harmless beneath a lantern she had probably chosen because it matched the brass hardware. She did not move toward it. "You don't have to go inside yet," I said quietly, shifting the car into park and leaving the engine running. Elena turned her head just enough to look at the house. She wore a modest beige blouse, buttoned cleanly beneath a closed cream blazer, the cuffs slightly creased from a dinner that had gone from corporate networking to private sabotage in less than 20 minutes. She had chaired merger rooms that made senior executives sweat. I knew because my agency had been hired to patch the firm's physical and digital vulnerabilities before the board vote. Yet, in the dashboard glow, she held herself like the passenger seat was the last stable ground she trusted. "Someone is in my network. Ethan," she said. I did not reach for her phone. In my line of work, you do not take a device until the client offers it. You do not open a door just because someone is frightened. You do not mistake access for consent. Define in your network. Her thumb lifted from the screen. A faint crescent mark remained on the glass where pressure and heat had fogged the surface. "Marcus sent me a message," she said, every word 2-level. A screenshot of a draft email. "I wrote it on my home laptop 3 hours ago. I never sent it. It was a private note to myself after the merger dinner, venting about the board's incompetence and the way they keep delaying due diligence. If he forwards it to the chairman, he'll say I'm undermining the vote. He gave me until Friday to withdraw my name for COO. The turn signal clicked again. Friday, 3 days. A board vote that would decide whether her company survived the merger intact. A rival with a stolen draft and enough knowledge of corporate politics to use embarrassment as a weapon. It was not the content of the email that made the threat dangerous. It was where it had come from. "Did you send that draft through company mail?" "No. Local Notes app on my personal laptop. It wasn't synced. It wasn't saved to the cloud." "Who had access to the laptop?" "No one. It was at home." She looked at the house again, and this time I saw it. The moment the word home changed shape in her head. Her hand flattened over the phone as if covering the screen could make the walls solid again. I let the turn signal click twice before I spoke. "Do you want me to sweep the house?" Her eyes cut back to mine. She was used to men in our industry making decisions for her, then calling it leadership. I could see the old reflex in the way her chin lifted, ready to refuse before she had even weighed the offer. "Can you?" "Yes," I said. "I can check for physical taps, rogue transmitters, and unauthorized devices. I can document anything I find. But it is your house, your equipment, and your call. You can wait here. You can come in behind me, or we can call uniformed police and not touch anything until they arrive." She swallowed. Her phone buzzed once beneath her palm. She did not look down. "If we call police now, will Marcus know?" "Possibly. Depending on how the complaint is routed, yes." "Then sweep it," she said. "Document everything. I will wait in the car." I nodded once. "Leave the engine on. Keep the doors unlocked. If anything feels wrong, step out and call emergency services first, then me." "You sound like you give instructions to people on rooftops." "Sometimes parking garages," I said, "because dry humor at the edge of fear works better than telling someone not to be afraid." A brief, surprised line softened the corner of her mouth. It disappeared almost immediately, but the signal kept clicking, and her fingers loosened half an inch from the phone. I stepped out into the cool night with my kit in one hand and her spare key in the other. The key had a small green rubber sleeve around the bowl, worn at one corner from use. I held it up before I left the curb. "I'm using this only for the entry sweep," I said. "When I come back, I hand it to you." "I know. I need to say it anyway." Something in her face shifted. Not trust yet. Trust was too large a word for a woman who had just learned someone might have been inside her house. But she heard the fence I was building around the situation, one rail at a time. Her front walk was dry except for a thin line of sprinkler water near the steps. I avoided it automatically. The porch light hummed above me. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood. I did not turn on the main lights. I slipped on nitrile gloves, photographed the foyer from the threshold, then moved room by room with an RF signal detector in my left hand and a flashlight low in my right. A living room, a kitchen, a hallway with framed architectural prints, no obvious disturbance, no open drawers, no broken latch. Whoever had come in had not wanted Elena to know. That was worse. The signal detector stayed quiet until I reached her home office. It sat at the back of the house, facing the garden, with a standing desk, 2 monitors, and a wireless router tucked too neatly behind a white ceramic planter. The detector chirped once, then spiked. I crouched. The router's Ethernet port held a small inline packet sniffer about the size of a flash drive. Black plastic, no label. It had been placed by someone who understood both network traffic and the habit most executives have of trusting hardware already plugged into a wall. I took 6 photos before touching it. Wide shot, router, cable route, device angle, serial mark, LED status. Then I slid the device free with padded forceps and sealed it inside a static shield bag. The house went quiet again. There are different kinds of silence. Empty silence, safe silence. The silence after a breach is neither. It has edges. It makes ordinary rooms look like staged photographs of themselves. My old instructor at the security academy used to say, "You don't secure a perimeter by locking the doors. You secure it by knowing who holds the keys." It sounded dramatic when I was 23 and still thought every problem could be solved with better locks. 7 years later, standing in Elena Morgan's office with an illegal tap in my hand, it felt less like a saying and more like a warning. I finished the sweep. No cameras, no secondary transmitters, no physical tampering on the laptop dock. Whoever planted the device wanted data, not surveillance. That narrowed the threat, but it did not make the house feel clean. When I returned to the car, Elena had her window lowered 2 inches despite the cold. She was listening to the street. I opened the passenger door and held up the static shield bag. "House is clear," I said. "One physical tap on the router. No cameras, no audio devices, no sign of forced entry." She stared at the small black rectangle through the plastic. Someone was inside. Yes. I handed her the green-sleeved key first. She closed her fingers around it before accepting the bag. The order mattered. Inside, the kitchen became the only room she was willing to stand in. She did not sit at first. She set the tap on the granite island, then stepped back until her hip touched the counter behind her. The thermostat read 72, but her arms folded tight across her ribs. I moved to the wall unit and raised the heat by 2 degrees without making a comment. Then I placed my encrypted laptop on the island. Still closed. "This is a felony," she said. Her voice did not shake, but the cabinet handle behind her clicked once under the pressure of her grip. "It is. But if you go to the board right now with only that device, Marcus denies it. He says you planted it. He says panic makes people sloppy. The stolen draft still becomes a weapon." Her eyes sharpened. The executive came back for a second, angry enough to stand upright. "So what do we do?" "2 lawful options," I said. 1, we preserve the tap as evidence and call police tonight. 2, with your written authorization as the affected executive and homeowner, I analyze the device memory, trace its transmission logs, and build enough proof to remove his leverage before the board can be stampeded. Either way, you decide. She looked at the laptop, then at the tap. Then, at the front hall, where the spare key hung alone from her finger. "Write the authorization." I did. Clean language, limited scope, device analysis, home network diagnostics, evidence preservation, no unrelated personal data, no corporate systems without separate authorization. She read every line twice. Her thumbnail found the side of her index finger again, stopped there, and released. She signed. "We trace it," she said. "We end it." For the next 2 hours, we built a war room out of an ordinary kitchen. I pulled the MAC address from the packet sniffer, while Elena opened a physical planner with a navy cover and tabs, so precise they looked military. She matched each empty house window against the device's first transmission log. I extracted the signal history. She wrote possible entry times in a narrow, controlled hand. By midnight, the island had become 2 territories, my encrypted terminal, static bags, and cable adapters on one side, her planner, handwritten schedule, and a growing list of names on the other. The refrigerator hummed behind us, somewhere inside the wall. A pipe clicked as the heat came on. "First transmission Tuesday at 2 p.m., she said. "Where were you?" "Office, budget committee." Marcus was there. "Who could enter the house?" "Cleaning service every Tuesday morning. Building maintenance if I request it. My assistant has an emergency key sealed in an envelope at the office." "Was the envelope intact?" She went still. That was the right reaction, not panic, recognition. "I didn't check after the dinner," she said. "Then we add it to the morning list." Her eyes were red at the edges. She had been awake since before dawn. She kept reading the same Tuesday block in the planner as if a new answer might appear between the lines. I stood, found a glass in the cabinet, and filled it with water from the fridge. "Drink. We can't trace an IP if you pass out." She accepted the glass, the smallest crack of humor breaking through her face. Is that official crisis protocol? "Step 4, right after don't argue with the man holding the router corpse." A real laugh slipped out of her. It was brief, tired, and nothing like the polished sound she probably used at donor dinners. It did more for the room than the extra heat. The tap's internal storage gave us its broadcast behavior, but not the receiver identity. The signal strength suggested a nearby relay. Marcus would not be sitting in a van outside Elena's house. Men like Marcus did not do their own dirty work if an assistant, vendor, or compromised contractor could be made useful. "Neighborhood cameras?" I said. Elena rubbed one eye with the heel of her hand, then pulled her laptop closer. 2 houses on the corner have doorbell cameras. Mrs. Alvarez across the street has a security camera because her grandson installed it after a package theft. She emails me every time my trash bins are not fully closed. Useful woman. Terrifying woman, Elena said, already typing, but useful. Her email to Mrs. Alvarez was respectful, specific, and entirely Elena. No drama, just dates, times, and a note about neighborhood safety. The reply came 7 minutes later with 3 clips attached and a subject line in all caps. I knew that cleaning van was suspicious. The first clip showed the cleaning service van arriving at 10:12 a.m. Tuesday. The second showed a man in a gray maintenance jacket leaving Elena's side gate at 10:27 with no cleaning supplies in his hands. The third showed a dark sedan stopping half a block down 5 minutes later. The plate was partly obscured by glare, but the rear bumper had a distinctive scrape across the left corner. Elena leaned closer to the screen. This time, her sleeve brushed the edge of my jacket, not my shoulder, and she shifted the laptop between us so the evidence, not the closeness, held the center of the room. "That is not anyone from my cleaning service," she said. "No." "And the sedan? We need a clearer plate." Her phone vibrated on the island before she could answer. It was not Marcus. It was worse because it was public. An automated alert from the firm's internal communication server flashed across her screen. She opened it. Her face changed before the page finished loading. "He didn't wait," she said. I turned the screen. A blind item had gone out to the executive mailing list, phrased like gossip but structured like a knife. Leadership instability. Private contempt for board stewardship. A phrase lifted directly from her stolen draft. The chairman called an emergency disciplinary hearing for tomorrow at noon, she said. If they put me on administrative leave, I'm automatically out of the COO running. Marcus only needs 48 hours of suspension. The vote moves without me. The pipe clicked inside the wall again. Elena set the glass down with care. The water rippled once and stilled. There it was, the real lever, not embarrassment, procedure. He wants the board to act before evidence exists, I said. Then we need evidence tonight. Yes. The data center, she said before I did. I closed my laptop halfway. The tap had to forward data somewhere. If Marcus or his proxy pulled the stolen draft through a corporate endpoint, the firewall appliance logged the inbound connection, but the core rack requires emergency audit access. I have consultant clearance for perimeter review, not live extraction from the protected logs. I can authorize access as the affected executive. You can request it. The security director has to record it. If we do this, we do it clean. No back doors, no favors, no hero nonsense. She stared at me, then reached for her phone. Gerald will be asleep. Wake him. He hates Marcus. Then he will enjoy following policy very slowly and very accurately. That earned another tired laugh. She called Gerald, the firm's security director, and put the phone on speaker. It took 4 rings and one very confused greeting before his voice sharpened. Elena, are you safe? I am with Ethan Bennett, she said. He found a physical packet sniffer on my home router. I am requesting emergency audit authorization under the merger security protocol. Gerald went silent for 3 seconds. Put Bennett on. I identified myself, gave the chain of custody summary, and listed the exact logs I needed. Gerald asked the right questions. Good man, tired, annoyed, but careful. By the time the call ended, we had a recorded authorization number, a written email from Elena, and a requirement that I export only the relevant log segments under Gerald's remote observation. Clean enough? Elena asked. Clean enough to survive a hostile board member with outside counsel? Then go. We go, I corrected. You stay outside the server room, but you are the authorizing executive. Your presence matters. The drive downtown was a blur of neon and wet pavement. The turn signal clicked at every lane change, each pulse cutting through the silence. Elena kept the blue authorization email open on her phone, checking it once, twice, then locking the screen and placing it face down in her lap. At the corporate office, the lobby guard looked too awake for 1:38 a.m. That meant Gerald had called ahead. We signed in. Elena wrote her name with a hand that no longer shook. The server room sat 2 floors below street level behind biometric access and a steel door that sealed with a hiss. Gerald appeared on a wall-mounted tablet, gray hair flattened on one side, reading glasses low on his nose. Mr. Bennett, he said, this session is recorded. Understood. Ms. Morgan, confirm the scope. Elena stepped toward the camera. I authorize extraction of firewall logs tied to the packet sniffer's MAC address, the proxy receiver identified from my home network, and any executive terminal receiving that specific data stream. No unrelated personnel data, no message content beyond necessary hash verification. I glanced at her. She had been cornered, threatened, and pulled from her own house. She still remembered to limit the scope. Competence is sometimes the only kind of courage people recognize in themselves. I connected my laptop directly to the firewall appliance. The room was cold enough to bite through my sleeves. Server fans roared softly. A mechanical ocean. I ran the query. The first pass returned noise, routine updates, background syncs, harmless traffic. The second pass isolated a packet size pattern that matched the TAPS logs within 3 seconds. The third pass gave us the route. Home router to neighborhood relay. Relay to a commercial cloud proxy. Proxy to corporate inbound endpoint. Endpoint to one executive terminal. Marcus Vance. The deliverable sat on the screen in a row of timestamps and hash values. Dry, ugly, undeniable. I exported the relevant segment, signed it with my consultant credential, and Gerald countersigned from his remote terminal. I am saving an independent copy in the security vault, Gerald said. Ms. Morgan, for the record, this log shows unauthorized receipt of data from a physical interception device linked to your private residence. Elena's face reflected in the server room glass. She did not smile. She closed her eyes once, opened them, and said, "Thank you, Gerald." Gerald leaned closer to his camera. "For what it's worth, I never liked the way Marcus treated audit trails like decorations. That is worth more than you think," she said. At 3:12 a.m., we returned to her kitchen with the evidence sealed inside a blue folder. I expected her to collapse. Instead, she pulled out her planner and began drafting her opening statement for the hearing. "You need sleep," I said. "I need 20 minutes and black tea." "You have black tea?" "Second cabinet, left of the mugs. Don't oversteep it." I am a security consultant, not a monster. The corner of her mouth moved. She did not look up from her notes. I made the tea exactly as instructed and set it on the island before she asked again. Anticipatory care is not dramatic. It is not a speech. It is watching someone's hand hover near an empty cup and filling it before pride has to negotiate with need. She drank half the mug, then underlined 3 sentences in her statement. "Do you want me to speak tomorrow?" I asked. "Only if they challenge the technical evidence." "And if they challenge you?" She looked up. "Then they will regret scheduling the meeting before lunch." That was the first time all night I believed she might enjoy surviving this. At 11:45 a.m., I parked in front of Elena's house. The turn signal clicked in the quiet cabin as she walked down the front path, carrying the blue folder. She had changed into a tailored navy suit and a white blouse buttoned to the collar. No armor could hide the lack of sleep. But she did not look breakable. She looked focused. She got into the passenger seat and placed the folder on her lap. "Did you bring the flash drive?" she asked. I held up the encrypted drive, original export, signed by me and Gerald, printed log summary in the folder. Page 3 ties Marcus's terminal to the proxy stream. "Good. Do you want to rehearse?" "No. If I rehearse, I will start sounding like a press release. Most executives consider that a promotion." She gave me a sideways look. "Do not make me laugh before I dismantle a man." Noted. The boardroom hallway was all glass, marble, and the kind of silence money buys to pretend fear is not present. Marcus and the chairman were already inside. So were 2 directors, corporate counsel, HR, and Gerald, who looked even more sleep-deprived in person. Elena stopped short of the doors. I held the blue folder out but did not force it into her hands. "I can go in with you," I said. "I can explain the technical chain, or I can wait here and come in only if they need verification. Do you want me in the room?" She looked at the folder, her thumbnail pressed against her index finger for 1 second. Then she released it and took the evidence. "No," she said. "I need to do this myself. But don't leave. I'm not going anywhere." She pushed through the doors. From the hallway, through the frosted glass, I saw shadows move. Marcus stood when she entered. Elena did not take the seat they had left for her at the far end. She walked to the head of the table and set the blue folder down hard enough that I heard the impact through the door. 10 minutes is a long time when your work is on the other side of a wall and the person using it matters more than your record. The door opened. Gerald stepped out first, holding a second folder. He glanced at me, lifted 2 fingers in a small signal, and kept walking toward the elevators. A clean chain had been accepted. Then Marcus came out. He did not look at me. His face had gone flat and pale, the expression of a man whose leverage had turned into evidence. Behind him, HR followed with a security escort. Elena emerged last. She held the blue folder tucked against her side. Her hand was steady now. When Marcus passed within 2 feet of her, she did not step aside. He had to angle around her. The board verified the logs. She said when the hallway cleared, "Marcus is being removed pending investigation. The blind item is being retracted. The COO vote proceeds with me on the slate. Congratulations." She looked at the folder, then back at me. "You said the question was who had the keys." "Yes. It was the cleaning contractor's subcontractor. She said, Marcus had him listed as temporary maintenance through a shell vendor. Gerald found the access request buried in facilities records. That answered the central question that had been sitting under every hour since she stepped into my car. Not remote magic, not a ghost in her machine, a borrowed key, a fake work order, a man who thought private fear made public ambition easier to break. Gerald will preserve the access logs. Already done. Mrs. Alvarez sent her video to corporate counsel and told them Marcus's sedan needs a car wash. I tried not to smile and failed. Terrifying woman. Useful woman, Elena corrected. And this time her smile lasted. We left the building through the side exit to avoid the executive lobby. In the car, the afternoon light made the windshield almost white. I drove her home without turning on the radio. Some silences deserved not to be filled. When I pulled against her curb, the turn signal clicked in the cabin again. The sound had followed us from panic to proof. I shifted into park and kept both hands on the wheel. My temporary access expires at midnight. I said, Gerald is assigning a new vendor to rebuild your home network tomorrow. Police will need your statement. Corporate counsel will need one too. I can send you a checklist. She did not open the door. The porch light was still on, even though it was afternoon. The house looked ordinary from the street. That was the cruel part of a privacy breach. The walls did not change shape after someone violated them. They simply waited for you to trust them again. Elena placed the blue folder on the center console between us. Don't stop yet, she whispered. Can we sit here until I remember this house belongs to me again? I turned my head. Her eyes were not asking me to rescue her. They were asking for a witness while she took back the view of her own front door. Yes, I said. I cut the engine. The turn signal stopped clicking, leaving the cabin wrapped in a quiet that no longer had teeth. For a while, neither of us moved. She looked at the porch. I looked at the street, the mirrors, the empty curb behind us. Not because I thought danger was still there, but because my body had been trained to keep scanning long after a threat had passed. You can stop working, she said. Not sure I know how. Then practice. She reached into her bag, pulled out the green-sleeved spare key, and set it beside the blue folder. I used to think security meant no one could get in, she said. Now I think it means knowing who is allowed to stand at the door. The words settled between us with the key, the folder, and the quiet proof of everything we had done without taking her choices away. Elena, I said carefully, I am still the consultant who worked your case. I need the boundary clear. I know. Then, for tonight, I can sit here until you are ready to go inside. I can walk to the porch and wait while you open the door yourself. After that, I go home, tomorrow, after statements and handoffs. If you still want to ask me something personal, I will answer as myself. Her face softened, not with disappointment, but with the kind of respect that made the boundary worth having. Tomorrow then, she said. I walked her to the porch and stopped one step below the landing. She put the key into the lock herself. The door opened. She stood in the threshold for a moment, shoulders rising once, falling once. Then she looked back at me. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Elena. I waited until she closed the door from the inside. Then I walked back to my car, turned off the porch path light she had forgotten, and drove away before I could mistake relief for permission. The next day, she called at 5:40 p.m. Not as a client. She made that clear before I could answer with my professional greeting. Corporate counsel has my statement. Police have the device and chain of custody. Gerald has replaced the router, revoked every old key card, and Mrs. Alvarez has appointed herself the neighborhood surveillance chair. Congratulations or condolences? Both. I stood in my office with one hand on the back of my chair, watching evening collect against the windows. You said I could ask something personal today. She said, I did. Would you have coffee with me somewhere that has terrible security and decent pie? That is a reckless combination. I am trying to diversify my risk profile. I laughed then, really laughed, and felt something in my chest move that had been braced for years. Send me the address, I said. 6 months later. The winter wind rattled the tall windows of the corporate banquet hall, while 100 conversations braided themselves under the chandeliers. The merger had closed. Elena had been confirmed as chief operating officer. Marcus was no longer with the firm, and the shell vendor case was making its slow, unglamorous way through legal channels. I stood near the back of the room in a tuxedo I tolerated for exactly Elena's sake, and no one else's. A glass of sparkling water sat untouched in my hand. I had chosen the position with the best line of sight to the exits out of habit. I was working on that. On stage, Elena finished her keynote. She spoke about infrastructure, trust, and the cost of pretending systems protect people when no one checks who holds the keys. She did not mention Marcus. She did not need to. The applause rose around her, and she stepped down from the podium with the same steady poise she had carried into the boardroom. She did not stay for the directors clustered near the stage. She crossed the room toward me, her face softening with every step until the COO disappeared and the woman from the passenger seat remained. Stronger now, not because fear had vanished, but because it no longer drove. "You're hiding," she said. "I'm strategically placed. Near the exits, best airflow." "Liar." I handed her the water. She took it, then reached into the small evening bag at her side. For one wild second, I thought she had brought a corporate document to her own celebration. Instead, she held out a key. Not the green-sleeved spare. This one was new, brass, and attached to a small tag from the locksmith who had rebuilt her entire home entry system. "Not for emergencies," she said. The room kept moving around us. Glasses lifted. Executives laughed. Someone called her name from across the hall. Elena did not look away from me. "For when you want to come in," she said. "And for when you want to leave your tools in the garage instead of pretending you only stopped by to check the router." I looked at the key in her hand. "You don't secure a perimeter by locking the doors. You secure it by knowing who holds the keys." Back then, it had meant access logs, spare keys, and the ugly truth of a breach. Now it meant standing in a public room while the woman I loved offered me trust without surrendering a single inch of herself. A senior board member approached, smiling politely at Elena before his eyes shifted to me. "David," Elena said, clear enough for the people nearby to hear. "I'd like you to meet my partner, Ethan Bennett." No whisper, no hiding, no crisis forcing the words out. I took the key from her palm, closed my fingers around it, and felt the tiny ridges press into my skin. "Lead the way," I said. "The end,"